Jeff. I think we'll start with Nathan. Take it away, Nathan.
Hi, Nathan.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Nathan. I'm a senior at Glenbard East. And so I was just wondering, so you mentioned that colleges spend just a few minutes on each application. And you also mentioned about how you want to stray away from the ordinary. So like what elements of each application, especially in the essays, does a student need to stand out?
So it's a great question. I get a lot of questions about the essay, and I will tell you that admissions officers, and I know this is going to be really disappointing to all those people who spend a lot of time on their essay, they don't spend a lot of time reading the essay. They'll speed read it. Most cases, they'll look at the very beginning and the very end, and then they'll kind of they'll speed read it. So you really want to focus on the beginning, the end, and those first sentences of each paragraph. That's really where you're going to focus. You also want to not try so hard, right? I think too many students are thinking about what does this person on the other side of the desk want to read rather than what you want to write about. And what do you want to write about? You want to write about something that really shows them a side of you that they're not going to see in other parts of the application. So what about you that is not going to show up in your grades or your transcript or your activities? That's what's going to really grab their attention. They know you're only 18 or 19, that you haven't lived a full life yet. So don't try so hard. I think the most successful essays are those essays that say you took your name off of it and you dropped it on the floor, and somebody who knew you picked it up, they would give it to you because they know that's you. Again, genuine, really understanding who you are. That to me is the point of the essay. Same thing with the activities. Don't feel like the Common App has 10 spots for activities. Don't feel like you have to fill in every single activity. Really, what they're trying to get a sense of you is what are you really interested in? What drives your passions? I think a lot of students sign up for clubs their junior year and sign up for sports their junior year because they think they have to fill in all 10 of those spots. That's not what they're looking for. They're not necessarily looking for breadth. They're not looking for necessarily students who lead in everything, right? They don't want the president of every club and the captain of every team. It doesn't mean they don't want those students, but they're also looking for students who they often refer to as the glue students, right? Those students who bring the class together. And so that's what they're looking for when, for example, when they read your recommendations. Is this the type of student that could help bring students together rather than always have to be the leader of students?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of questions coming in. How can you determine which schools are buyers and which schools are sellers?
Great question, Gilda. So I will give you a little hack, and then I'll tell you, go to my website, jeffselingo.com. You can download a list of buyers and sellers there. There's directions for doing that. I have a smaller list, and if you buy the book, you'll get the bigger list. But here's a hack to easily identify this. You want to go into something called the common data set. So this is something you should know about anyway. Every school has to fill out what's called the common data set that goes to publishers. And it is what it says. It's the common data set around financial aid and admissions. Most colleges, now not all, but most colleges will put that common data set up on their website. So just Google it, Emory University Common Data Set, University of Chicago Common Data Set, whatever universities you want to look at. And you're going to look through that common data set. And you're going to be looking for a couple of clues about whether it's a buyer or seller. First of all, the more selective it is, meaning it accepts fewer than 20% of students who apply, the more likely it is a seller. Not always, but more likely it is a seller. But really where you're going to see whether it's a buyer or seller is look at the financial section, the financial aid section of the common data set. And there is a line on there that talks about institutional aid, and it splits it into two columns, need-based aid and non-need-based aid. So how much aid do they give away based on need, and how much do they give away not based on need? The more they give away on need-based aid, the more likely they are a seller, because sellers don't have to use money to lure students to campus. And again, doesn't mean that buyers are bad in doing that. Discounting is rampant in retail and it's rampant in higher education. There's nothing wrong with getting a coupon or getting money off your new luxury car. It's still a luxury car. And the same thing with education. Some schools are able to not have to discount their tuition because they get so many applications, but most schools do. And really what you're looking at is if they give away more aid in non-need-based aid, that's more likely to be a buyer. More in need-based aid, more likely to be a seller. If you go a couple of lines down from that line, you'll see the average aid package to that school, and you'll see how many people got that aid package. So it gives you a sense of how much aid they're giving away. That will tell you whether they're a buyer or seller. If you want to know more about your own personal situation, then try out the net price calculator. So the net price calculator, every college is required to have it on its website by the federal government. Some are better than others, but that gives you a little bit of a sense of what you might qualify for very early on in the process.
Very good. Thank you. Can you talk, another question came in about early decision and early action.
Yep. So I'm not a fan of early decision. I'll just put that out there right now. So early decision is probably happening right now for most seniors in the next couple of weeks. They're going to have to submit applications for early decision. Early decision means that you really want to go to the school, and you submit an application usually around November 1st, and you find out sometime in December whether you get in. Early decision, unlike early action, is binding, meaning if you get in December, that's it. You're done. You're going to that school, and the rest of your college search process is now over. Early action, similar in that you apply in November and you find out in December usually, or very early January, depending on the round, but you're not required to necessarily go to that place. You have until May to make a decision. Here are some of the upsides, downsides to early decision in particular. Most selective schools have early decision. And when they do, they fill a lot of their class early decision, because not only is early decision mean the process is over for you, the process is also over for the colleges, and they love it, right? They can lock in half their class. Remember, I was talking in early decision in many cases. I was talking earlier about yield, that concept of yield, right? They want to know when they have all these applicants that you're actually going to show up. Well, early decision is a great way to guarantee you're going to show up because it's a binding decision. And so what's happened, especially over the last 10 years, among the most selective colleges, is that they used to take maybe 25% of their class early decision, meaning 75% of the seats were still open for regular decision. Now, at some of these selective colleges, 40, 50, 60% of their seats are taken early decision. And what that's doing is, I think, putting too much pressure on students to think about early decision, because that's the only way they're going to get in those schools. Now, one of the things about early decision is it doesn't give you a chance to compare financial aid offers. So going back to the buyers and sellers, if you're applying to a selection of schools, the nice thing about having multiple acceptances is you also get multiple financial aid offers. And so in March and April, or really April, I guess, you will be looking at, the 3 or 4 schools you've been accepted to and really want to go to, and you're going to have multiple financial aid offers that might differ. And then that's when you could start to think about the financial fit of this college. In early decision, you don't get that chance because, again, it's binding. Now, many of these schools are pretty generous with financial aid, but you'll never quite know, if you apply early decision, what else is out there.
Mike, why don't we get the question from you, and then I'll come back to some of the questions in the chat. So take it away.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Gilda. I was looking, thinking about some of my students as I was trying to pull up other questions to ask, and I kind of want to just ask Jeff about, you talk about fit. There's not a such thing as a perfect fit. I've always tried. I guess I want you to validate me as a counselor here. Mike Niebuhr, school counselor at Glenbard West, by the way. Kind of want you to validate me as a counselor. One of the things I try to preach all the time is that it's not really necessarily about the name on the diploma for a college or university, but it's really about the experiences that you have at these schools, which to me kind of takes away from the prestige of those, that small percentage of schools that everybody applies to, but trying to get that experience. And I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, so that people can widen their lens and find schools like that.
Yeah, you're preaching what I'm pointing to behind me here. There is Life After College, which was my last book before Who Gets In and Why, and it really looked at how people get jobs after college, and it really has a lot more to do with what you do in college than where you go to college. Are you going to take the courses that lead to the mentors, that push you hard and make you think in new and different ways? Are you going to get the internships and do the activities in college? All of that matters more. And you could get those experiences at hundreds and hundreds of colleges out there. Does going to Yale or Harvard or you fill in the blank college give you access to a network that you probably wouldn't have otherwise had? Sure, it does. I'm not going to deny that. And if you want to go to a top law school and you want to go to work on Wall Street or you want to become a Supreme Court justice, I will say probably going to those schools definitely helps. But most parents and most students they want to have a good life and a good job. And you could get that at most colleges because it's what you do there that's going to matter the most. There are students who go to fill in the name great college and end up on the unemployment line and end up underemployed throughout life. So again, it has a lot less to do with that. And I'm just going to end up with one other point that I make in the book, Mike, and it's this. There is a great resource called the College Scorecard. This is a federal government website put in place a couple of years ago, and they keep adding to it every year. So it keeps getting better. But the focus of the College Scorecard is really around outcomes. So when you look at the College Scorecard and you look at colleges out there, they're going to tell you, for example, the percentage of students who graduate in 4 years. They're going to tell you the level of debt of those students that are coming out. They're going to tell you how many of those students are paying back their debt. And one of the things they recently added, and they're going to keep adding to this, is first-year salaries of students who got financial aid, because that's what they know. Students who got financial aid, they're going to tell you the first-year salaries by program. Now, not every program has to have so many students in the program in order to report it, but they're going to tell you a computer science major at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign makes the same as a computer science major at Duke University the first year out. So you can start to compare outcomes based on salary. Now, I'm not just saying salary is the only outcome we should measure from college. I think college provides you a lot of things, a lot of tools for life. But if you're thinking about, well, of course, I'm going to go major in computer science at Duke because it's Duke. Well, when you start to look at that in comparison to a lot of other colleges, you're going to see graduates, actually, there's a lot of overlap between graduates no matter where they went.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Jeff. This is a question about a student who does well in school, gets good grades, but doesn't score well on the tests. How common is it for this kind of situation? And how do they assess that?
So they do well. They don't do well on the test,
Correct.
But they do well in school. Yes.
Correct.
So they're going to really look at the strength of the curriculum. They know that some students are just not good test takers. Now, with test optional, it gives you the option now of not submitting that test score. So you don't have to submit it. And if it's really low, they may put you in kind of a holding pattern until they see how the rest of their class shapes up. But you don't have to submit that in a test optional world. So that's the nice thing about being test optional. If you're not a great test taker, but the rest of your application is great, then I wouldn't submit it. Now, if you're going to a college that requires test scores, no matter what, they're really going to lean in on that high school curriculum. And if they know your high school, if you're applying to a school where they've taken kids from your high school every year for the past 10, 15, 20 years, they're going to have a lot more trust in your curriculum and your grades than if your high school never sent anyone to that school. So that I will tell you, that's where your high school does matter at some of these colleges, where there's a little bit of a trust factor in that.
What do you think is the biggest mistake that students, parents, and schools make when it comes to college application?
I think the biggest mistake that students make is not having a balanced list. I think everybody goes into this process thinking that they're going to have a balanced list, but there's a little bit of ambition in this, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think you have a little bit of a creep where people say, yes, I'm going to have a balanced list. And then suddenly when you look at the list, it's weighted towards the one side. In other words, it's a little bit of a stretch. So I think that really having that balanced list and understanding it around 3 dimensions, what I call academic fit. And does that academic fit means, does it have the academic programs that you want to major in? Again, from an SAT and grading standpoint, are you kind of in the middle there? Or maybe even close to the top? Is it a place you can get in? Academically, is it a place you're going to feel comfortable? I always tell students, you want to be in a place where you're swimming along the stream. You're not way out ahead, because if you're way out ahead and all your peers are so-so, what's going to happen is they're going to pull you back. Or if you're always struggling to keep up, it's really going to be hard on you from a well-being standpoint. So you want to make sure that academic fit is a place you feel comfortable academically. Social, is it a place, you don't want to be in a city or an urban area, or do you want to be in a rural area? Do you want to be at a big college, a small college? That to me is the social fit. Do you want sports and fraternities and sororities or not? Those are the social fit. And then the third fit is that financial fit I was talking about earlier. And that's the other mistake that I think parents and students make. They always say, you know what, we'll worry about paying for because to be honest with you, financial aid is a black box as much as admissions is. And so I think many parents throw up their hands and they'll say, you know what, we'll worry about paying for college later. Let's just see if you get in. But going back to this idea of the buyers and sellers, if you think about where you have the best shot of actually getting some financial aid early on, you're going to have more of a balanced list.
Next question, trends. What trends are you predicting in the second year of the pandemic?
Very good one. I think, first of all, we're going to see fewer applications this year than last year. What I think happened last year is that because many students couldn't get to campus at all, many college counselors or admissions officers couldn't come to high schools. Most students were flying blind last year. So they had no idea what these campuses were like. And so instead of going to visit a campus and say, well, I don't really like it, I'm not going to apply there, because they couldn't get there, they applied to it anyway. So we saw students who in a normal year would apply to maybe 10 schools, now applying to 15 and 16 schools because they couldn't get to as many schools as they wanted to. This year, it's going to be a little different. I think more schools have opened up to tours, more college admissions officers are going into high schools to visit them. And so as a result, I think students are going to have a better feel for whether they want to apply to these schools or not. So I think we're going to start to see a little bit of a downward trend in applications. And I also think that this is the second year of test optional. So I think we might see students who, again, now realize, you know what, I know Harvard's not accepting test scores, or you don't have to submit a test score, but I'm not going to apply there because I really don't have a shot, right? Where last year, I think people said, I'm just going to throw an application to Harvard because they're not taking test scores this year. So I think those are the two trends that we're going to see this year.
Looks like we're close to the end here, and it's very interesting. No one has left this, and we have a lot of people on this call. So I really want to thank you. This is a question about reconciling the information from Naviance and the common data points about which of the schools that most look like a safety.
Yep. So remember, Naviance is based on your high school and the students who applied to your high school. Naviance is, I think, a little bit misleading because it only is not only is it gathering data just from your high school, but it only is gathering data where there's enough data points. And so what ends up happening is it's the same school, it's a smaller set of schools as a result, because it's the same schools that many students are applying to at your high school. So if you're really trying to Naviance offers clues, but really what you're looking for is the bigger pool. And that's where the common data set or Big Futures, which is operated by the College Board, or the university's own website on admissions, where they put data and you want to see how you fit. Now, people always ask me this question, but aren't we evaluated within our high school? Yes, you are. When they read applications, they're usually reading applications in a school group, or near the end, they'll look at, okay, we have 15 applications from this high school. What did we do with them? And they'll rank the students and they'll see, did number 1 get accepted and number 2 not, and number 3 did. And they might move students around at that point, but you're competing against the wider pool. You're not just competing against students in your high school. And that's where I think Naviance is a little bit misleading, in that it really is only looking at your high school.
And Jeff, our last question, and a couple of questions sound very similar. About buyer schools, seller schools, and merit pay and early decision. If buyer schools use merit pay to attract the strongest students, does that mean they don't really give merit aid to people who are applying binding early decision?
They're usually not giving the aid packages, maybe are not that generous. Really, where aid packages come into account in early decision is this. If you have a need, if you fill out the FAFSA or the CSS profile, which are the two big financial aid forms, and you have demonstrated need and you apply early decision, most of the selective schools in early decision, you want to see, do they promise to meet full need? If they promise to meet full need, then, and you have need, they will fill that. Now, they may not put merit aid on top of that. So, you may not get an extra nice package, but they'll at least meet your full financial need. Now, if you don't have a lot of financial need or don't have any financial need, or you're not filling out those forms and you apply early decision, they're not going to throw a lot of merit aid at you, very little, because they don't need to offer it as an incentive. They know you're applying early, you really want to come here. Where they offer financial aid as an incentive is in the spring, when they have to fill out the rest of their class and they have, all these applicants, but they know not all these applicants are going to come if accepted. And so the students they really want, they're going to throw more merit aid at them. The fact of the matter is, Gilda, and I mentioned this in the book, at Emory, for example, their early decision pool has half the need of their regular decision pool, meaning, wealthier students tend to apply early decision because they don't need to think about financial aid. So if financial aid is important to you, either need-based aid, or you really want to get, quote unquote, the best deal, you want that merit aid, then you're better off waiting till the spring. The trade-off is, you may not get into that most selective school. It is slightly easier, not a lot easier, by the way, it's slightly easier to potentially get in early decision. But the trade-off you're making here is that you don't have access potentially to that merit aid.
You do a wonderful job answering these questions. That's where you really find out who you're welcoming back again. Needless to say, we'll be welcoming you back again. I'm so grateful for your time, for everyone's time. We spent a lot of time trying to calm the fears and the anxieties, which are only multiplied now in this time of COVID. So please, everyone, do come back next week when we hear from Dr. Mark Brackett about those communication skills, about helping our students, really listening to them and helping them deal with the emotions that they're feeling. So that's next week, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, the Happiness Lab. Check out the YouTube channel for the Glenbard Parent Series with lots of resources. On November 9th, we have a program on the SAT test. So those of you that are here might be interested. Like us on Facebook, Instagram, tweet about it, come back, and let's go hug our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good luck.